Hello, and welcome to episode 41 of Webflow. I'm your host, Jack, and today my guest is Fateh Khodamoradi, better known as Kabarza. Kabarza is a fascinating member of the Webflow space, as you're about to hear in this episode. You may know him from his involvement as a coach and creator for Flux Academy. He's a Webflow designer and developer that is also building Flowing, a plugin that ensures you have built your Webflow website correctly by checking the quality of different elements. However, although Kabarza is flying high now in a stable life and career, he has had a challenging journey to get here. Kabarza immigrated from Iran to Germany in 2015 by crossing 9 borders and traveling over 4,500 kilometers. Since he didn't do military service in Iran, he didn't have a passport and so had to get travel by smugglers. Incredible story, which we'll dig into during this episode. Kabarza, welcome to Webflow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Perfect. Perfect intro.
I'm really glad. It's always really embarrassing if you do the intro and then someone's like, actually, no, that detail wasn't quite right. So I'm glad that I got things all right. Your name, I definitely messed up though, didn't I?
It's fine. It's Fateh Khodamoradi. I understand it's a quite difficult name. But hey, I'm going by Kabarza. It's a nickname given to me by my younger siblings. So I'm being called Kabarza in the family with friends. So I'm quite used to it. It's kind of has become my second name. And my little brother now is asking for shares because he's the guy who named me Kabarza, and he's like, "You're Kabarza. I named it." So yeah,
Are you gonna give him any shares? Shares of anything?
probably not. Just
Absolutely
kidding.
not. Yeah, I would have said the same thing to my little brother.
Yeah.
So you've got a hell of a lot on your plate. You've got your flowing plugin, you're building an agency, you're doing courses. Just how are you even doing all this, first of all, and kind of what does the average day look like for you?
An average day is like about waking up. I'm using my laptop normally right after waking up, trying to not be on social media a lot. Try to. I'm not saying I'm successfully not being on social media, especially Twitter, and check a few things regarding flowing. That's been eating my life for the past, I should say, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, like full time working on flowing, a plugin for Webflow. And then the rest of the day is like juggling tasks between my team members, trying to understand like what we have to do with, for clients, answering a few emails here and there. And I'm trying to also reduce the amount of meetings I have because I found it very like difficult to be productive while you have like 3 meetings in between. So I try to stay focused, stay on like the minimum amount of tasks as possible, so not trying to juggle too many things at the same time on the same day. And then that goes on for the rest of the day till the evening, and I sleep. So I'm basically full time, like all my day working, with the exceptions of doing like taking care of family in between, doing all the human things in between, but the rest is basically working.
Wow, you're a busy man. And for those who may not have seen the State of Flow all hands gathering, where you kind of showed um, flowing a little bit behind the scenes and stuff, can you give us a little flavor of what's to come for Webflowers that might be intrigued about your plugin?
Yeah, definitely. So this all started almost, I have to say, like 2 years ago when I started working with other freelancers on projects together, and all that, you know, quality assurance issues that you might encounter when you are trying to, ship a project for a client, and then you notice like one of your developers or designers didn't do something, they forgot to do something, or they didn't do it like quite nicely, or like the correct way, or just as simple as naming things correctly. I'm not talking about like all the technical details like naming classes correctly. I'm talking about things that like little people, not many people pay attention to, like the naming of the CMS fields and the help text that you write for your clients. Because at the end of the day, it's your clients that are going to use that, website and that CMS for many years, right? So I always found that to be something that slows us down, all this back and forth and going into getting like the feedback from the client that something was not quite right or they wanted to change it, or I noticed it before like handing it up to the client saying we have to fix these things. So I started creating a checklist, like a long checklist in Notion, where we started to give, I gave all my developers, so for each project they had to go through that checklist and say, okay, for example, that form is named correctly, like the email setup is correct, things like that. So all, not the naming the classes, that too, but also like all the other tasks kind of that you have to do. And of course that depending on projects, it varies and is kind of dynamic. So the way we've been handling this in Notion has been by filtering the different tasks or like Webflow features. For example, if you don't have CMS, you don't need to do CMS related tasks. So that got me into the idea of creating something native, like, or like almost native like for Webflow, like a checklist that also tries to check as many things as possible actively and like in a smart way, so automatically, and give you hints on what you have to do, and if you have already done it, if it recognizes it, it checks it, and if not, you have to do it and check it basically. So that's kind of like part of the plugin, but it goes deeper into creating tasks and getting feedback from client and all that, streamlining all that process from starting a project and making sure that you deliver it perfectly for your client, and they can give you feedback in a very easy way, and the developer has all the feedback and everything in Webflow, and you don't have to leave Webflow anymore. And this also can be applied for project managers, people who have like multiple Webflow developers and they want to make sure that they are delivering the projects in the highest quality possible, so they will be able to check the status of the projects and all those dynamic checklists and also the tasks that are manually added. So it's kind of like project management and a quality assurance tool for Webflow, all in Webflow. So it's a quite big task. It's a lot of designs.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like that when you start doing a plugin like this, there might be one little thing that you're like, okay, we can create a little thing that would help, you know, whatever. Like, let's say the how to or the text that explains what each CMS field is, for example. But then you're like, oh, and we should probably add this to the CMS, and then it's like, oh, and then wait, we probably need more than just the developer to see this. So it might be like, okay, so we'll need to notify the project manager, so that needs to link up with, I don't know,
Exactly.
Asana, and then it's like, oh my god, like this kind of is this
It
spider web
grows. Yeah.
of problems, and I think this is actually the experience that is very much linked with Webflow. You start thinking, oh, I'm gonna make a website, and then it's like, wow, the amount of stuff you need to think about, um, just in Webflow with all the different elements that if you're doing them properly, you need to think about. That's completely besides the design part of it, which is a whole
Yeah.
other beast. Um, I mean, it sounds like a really important tool from all the different things that you've said, but also just a very difficult plugin to build and to even know kind of where to focus your
Yeah.
energy as someone that's building it.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of work. The way I see it, like just generalize that, is like Webflow has made a few things very simple. Like the whole project setup. We don't have that anymore using Webflow. Like if you use a
Visual
custom
code editor or
stack,
whatever.
if you write it by writing the code, you have to set up the project and servers and whatnot. Right now, it's literally just pressing one button, create a new site, right? And then on the other side, we have that publishing part all figured out in Webflow, and it's all included. One button, well, actually two, the way Webflow University jokes about it, two buttons, and then you publish your site, right? But what's still difficult is that step in between, which is the building. So we are trying to tackle a few different things there, and try to make it easier to build websites faster and address that quality assurance issue. Just make sure that the quality of the website is really high.
You're obviously a very experienced Webflow dev, and I think only very experienced Webflow devs kind of know the extent of problems that come when you kind of dig deeper. Everything seems simple on the surface, and then the more you do it, the more you realize what you don't know, I find. And that must have taken years to get to. What I want to understand is, in the intro, we talked about this incredible journey that you needed to go on from your home country to Germany. Can we just backtrack and understand, how you even came across Webflow and what your start into thinking about all these problems was?
So it all started. So just a little bit about my background. Also in Iran, I studied software engineering, but I didn't finish it. So I was like quite early in university, and then we had to leave. It was actually end of 2015, like January, like very early days in January 2016, we left Iran. And then 15 days later, we were here in Germany. But that 15 days, that's a different story, and like really long one. Um, so when I came here, I had to learn English and German, uh, and I spent quite most of my time learning languages on those like early years. I would say like first 2 years, and I was still very into photography and videography, and that was what I was doing. I was trying to find clients. Probably that's like 2018, trying to find clients to do photo and video for them. And you just notice that people need websites as well, right? These things not naturally come together for small businesses. So I had a friend, and he had a very old website. It looked like Matrix. So if you would go to his website, you would literally see the Matrix, that letters kind of like raining. And it was a very horrifying experience, because you would feel like you've been hacked or something. Anyway, so I told him that I will make him a website, because I want to learn it. It was just like a kind of like a click for me to see, oh, there are websites to be built, and this looks something interesting. So let me try to see how I can build it. So I did some research, just YouTube stuff. At that time, I wasn't allowed to work, to go to university, to do anything. I was literally not allowed to do anything, and just stay home and watch YouTube, I guess. I wasn't allowed to even travel or leave my place for more than 3 nights in a row. So yeah, I got into it. I got into Elementor. I bought Elementor at that time, Elementor Pro, which was not really necessary, but I wanted to commit. I want to commit to this thing. So I bought Elementor Pro, I believe for like just shy of $200, a yearly subscription. And at that time, I wasn't allowed to work, and I was getting help from the government, but they cutted my money. So I was getting only 185 euros a month. So so I got Elementor, and I was really dedicated to it. It was just like an instant fall in love in this web thing, because I was like looking at other websites, and I did start building that website with Elementor, and just literally like 1 or 2 weeks later, that friend of mine that I was building this websites for free for, he got me a client. And that's around the time that right around the time that I was allowed to work, and it was like really exciting. Okay, I'm allowed to work. um, and yeah, I got my first client after like basically like 3 weeks of playing with WordPress, and it was like quite, a big client for the start. Yeah, so that's how I got into web in general. And then just a few months later, as I was building more websites just for fun, I noticed there are so many things I can't do. I remember I commented somewhere in Facebook, on a Facebook group. I said, how can I do this thing? I asked in a Elementor group, and somebody said, well, you can't do this with WordPress. You can't do this. You have to use Webflow. And I was like, what the hell is Webflow? So I searched Webflow, and surely the first thing you see is Ron Segal explaining Webflow beautifully. So I just, that was the second thing I fall in love with and started learning basically.
And okay, so wait, backtrack. So this was, you were starting out as video photography freelancing. That's kind of where you started thinking, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then you realized, oh, wait, like they don't, where are they going to put all this video and photos? They're going to need somewhere to put that. And that's kind of how the interest in web design came. Your friend had this terrible website, which, was giving people cardiac arrests. And you were like, I'm going to fix this for you. And then you got a client off the back of that 3 weeks later. That's a hell of a journey.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And it's still unbelievable when I mentioned that I had a 3K client. It's like for me, yeah, it's like quite a big client for the start. And just to pitch that to the client, it wasn't easy. I remember that the client was also talking to other web designers, and she looked at other experienced one who were much cheaper. But I pitched it in a way that I was really in love with it. I still am in that entire process of creating something really beautiful and nice. And yeah, I'm really grateful that she believed me. And I was upfront about that I don't have a lot of experience, but I showed her what I've been building up to that point. Nothing like 100% finished, but like a few pages that I had, and they were not bad. I'm not really ashamed of sharing those. I know they are not like the highest quality, but as the first work, they are not bad. So yeah.
That's pretty impressive that you're not that embarrassed about your first project. I think most people are. So that's pretty strong.
Yeah, I guess it's also that telling myself that, well, that's your first project, right? So
Yeah. I
there's
mean,
not much to embarrass about.
yeah, that's a great attitude. I think most people probably are looking at their first work like cringing hard, but you're like, no, it's my first project. Like, fair enough. Like, I've done it. I think it's worth saying that there's a hell of a lot of story to your life that you know, immigrating from Iran and that whole experience is something that we're not going to talk about too much in this episode. But if people do want to know more about it, there's an hour-long video that Kabarza has recorded, which is on the Flux channel. I really recommend looking at it because it puts um, where he is now into context and makes everything that he's doing even more impressive. So recommend checking that out on the Flux Academy channel. Speaking of Flux Academy, you then, you'd fallen in love with Ran by that point, and then you messaged the Flux team and said, I really appreciate what you're doing, and then they offered you a job. Or how did that bit come about?
Yeah, so it was late 2019. I was still at Adidas. I had a training, like 6 months full-time paid training I was working in IT and innovation there. And I'm really grateful for the chance I also had there, because I learned a lot. And this is where I also started Webflow. for some internal projects there that we were doing by with Google and Microsoft, and with EA, doing all of those things at Adidas. It was like incredible experience, and they wanted me to build something with Webflow, and they wanted me to build a website, not with Webflow, just build a website. And I told my manager, can I use Webflow? It's this new, like, shiny tool I want to learn. And the whole point of me there was to learn, right? So, and he was really nice, and he was like, yeah, sure, I don't care, just use whatever you want, learn it, and build a website. And I did like two, like, websites for internal purposes, like for the projects they were doing. And that's the time where, like, by the end of the time, being at Adidas, I saw this course from Run, like Webflow course. I bought that course. I believe it was a bundle with web design. Yeah, web design and Webflow course. I bought it because I wanted to up my game. I wanted to, I at that point I was creating websites. I wasn't like a newbie in Webflow, but I wanted to build more impressive stuff like what Run was doing. So I entered, Flux Academy in that way. And at that time, we were not on Circle, we were on Facebook groups. But then a few months later, um, Run made, the Circle community, which is like a community for Flux students. I joined there. I joined weekly calls with Run. So Run was teaching Webflow weekly, like answering students' questions. And at the beginning, I was really shy, but soon enough, when Ron was giving answers to the students, I was sometimes adding something extra, or like being a bit fancy with like a much easier, like, no code solution, right? Or like a trick. Or sometimes when Ron was like, okay, this is a bit more complex, we don't have time, maybe our other coaches will take care of this later, I would be like, okay, I'll take care of this. So I was like helping, trying to help. And that's where Ron noticed me. And yeah, later on, I talked to Anna, who was working at Flux Academy at that time, and they had opened positions for coaches. So I joined as a coach. I was recording Loom videos for students, and I told team that I like this. I like this recording Loom videos. It came natural to me. It wasn't as difficult as, it's quite difficult for a lot of people. Even if you are a native speaker, if you haven't done it, I encourage you do it. If you try to, like, record a video for somewhere that to be possibly seen by hundreds of people, it's on another level, and it's a bit difficult and uncomfortable. But for me, it was kind of like, okay, I want to tackle this thing. So I did. And then next thing, I was on YouTube. And then next thing after that, Ron was like, we are creating the new version of the Webflow Masterclass, and I wanted to help with that. So everything from planning to, basically do co-building the course with Ron Segal. And it was like a very interesting experience. I loved it.
That's a wild ride. Just
Yeah.
goes to show, if you really, really, are passionate and express that, and actually try and help others get to where they want to go, you'll end up getting to where you want to go in a strange way. I think there's something that's really important to draw out of that. You met, like, someone who you really looked up to, and then eventually you're literally making a course with them. That's insane in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And Ron is like one of the sharpest persons I've met. Like, his way of thinking, and like how organized he can express his thoughts. And also when he teaches, he has this, very simple way of explaining complex things. And even behind the scenes, it's always like this. It's very interesting, like how he thinks. And I learned quite a lot from him.
Crazy. Not just Webflow, I guess,
Yeah,
like
not just Webflow, like,
operations and
yeah, exactly. And You see him how nice he is on YouTube videos. He's like this nice with the team as well. It's
I thought
just
you were going to be like, he's the worst with us, though. He just changes. He
no,
is a complete
it's
arsehole off camera. No.
no, he's just so nice. It's incredible, and like that's also one of the reasons why I was so I was able to help others, and I was so willing in the community because the entire community was like that. Like it was all kind of like a culture coming from Ron that he's so nice and trying to help everyone. So most people in the community are like this, and I was just way before starting to work there as a coach. I was just helping others. Even if I didn't know the answer, I would go out of my way to search it, figure it out, and share a Loom video.
Yeah, no, it's the culture of kind of helping freely really stems from Ram. And he actually really helped me think about Webflow completely differently. He was like, you don't need to try and grow something really big. You just need to do it consistently right now and see where that takes you. And I'm actually interviewing him next week, so very excited about that.
Oh, super cool.
Let us jump into your failures. I could talk to you for hours, but people are listening, and I want to give them the beautiful nuggets that you're going to bring from these. Tell me about failure number one: not seeing an absolute client red flag.
Yeah, so that's from, I think it was like 2 years ago. A client, they messaged me. I believe they found me on YouTube and LinkedIn. And they messaged me that I had a discovery call with them, and in that discovery call they mentioned that they had a competitor. It was like a B2B business, and they wanted a complete rip of their website. Just they literally had the content also in the same, like organized the same way, just different. They were like a competitor, like a direct competitor to that tool. And the budget that they were offering me was also like less than my minimum engagement rate at that time. But with the justification that we don't want something really complex, and they seemed really nice. They were not like, hey, we are ripping off this, design. We're like trying to build, we are building something very similar, and this is where we start, but then we want to grow from this point. And what everybody explains in that situation. So I ended up accepting the project, and I kind of ignored that, that we want that ripoff. Basically, they didn't say it this way. They were like, we have this competitor, we want to create something really similar to this, but instead of using these colors, we want different. And instead of these shapes in the illustrations, we want different ones. So with my designer, we started working on it and giving them very early. They were also on a tight deadline, giving them design ideas, and they were not happy with anything. Even though, in my opinion, we were doing a great job to still try to differentiate the design from the original one, like the competitor, but be still using the same structures but still be different enough. But they were not happy with it, and they failed at communicating it. Like, why do I not like this? They were just like, I don't like this and I want a different version. And we did this for, I believe, like 2 weeks, trying to give them different versions, different variations for different sections. And we were already behind the schedule because of all the iterations. And then for each time that I wanted to ask them feedback, they would take at least like 2 to 3 days. And it ended up being something like 6, 7 days of not giving me feedback. So, imagine on a tight deadline, and the client is just goes absolutely like not answering your emails, even the follow-ups. So yeah, long story short, we ended up terminating the contract with them, and I didn't even bother with like charging them. It ended up it was in a manner that I just want to get the hell out of this contract. I don't want anything. I just want to move on with my life. I have a lot of other interesting things to do, so I don't want anything. So I ended up, talking to them in a very respectful way that this is not going to work out. The time that it took for the feedback was too long. I mentioned these things, and it was a learning experience at least. So since then, for all my proposals and contracts, I have it in the terms that we expect like 48 hours, in weekdays, response time from both parties. Even if the client is busy, I try to follow up and be like, okay, at least tell me that you seeing this email and you answer me in a time. And another point we ended up adding to our proposals is that we are specifying the different sprints and like the entire time frame that it takes, the timeline. And also we mention in the terms that if you don't deliver or communicate something on in the right time, a time, well, the deadline may changes. We can't meet it if you take like 7 days to answer my email that I need an immediate answer to. So yeah, it was not a big failure, just I would say 2 weeks of work, and we learned to pay more attention to these red flags and not take on any client, even if the job seems easy enough.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they painted a pretty rosy picture at the start, saying, look, we know exactly what we want. Okay, this is a simple job. It shouldn't take too long.
Yes.
Yeah, cliche after cliche after cliche. If it's that easy, just do it yourself. Just
Yeah.
do it yourself. Because it's clearly not that easy if you're coming to me and wanting to, pay someone else to do that. And
This is a great point. Yeah.
I think it's just whenever a client says it's simple, it's easy, it shouldn't be too hard. Fine. What have you tried it? Is that why you know that it's easy? If
Yeah.
so, if it's so easy, hey,
Yeah.
go on your
Easy
merry
is a red
way.
flag. Yeah. Easy.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Big old red flag right there. And also, I mean, this whole I think and it sounds like you had a similar problem with to what I've had quite recently when people say we want a brand refresh.
Mhm.
We don't want to rebrand. We don't want to rebrand. We want a brand refresh. So we're going straight into the website design. We don't have brand guidelines that we like. We've got brand guidelines, but we don't like them. So we just want little change here and there. Yeah. Change the colors, maybe change the font, maybe change the imagery. Yeah. Just a little. And then you're kind of going in blind to the design process. Is that kind of what happened to you? Because it sounds like they said, oh no, we know everything. We know everything that we want, but we just want a little change here and there. And it's like, okay, that's a change. That's a complete change. Is that what
Yeah.
happened to you?
It's very similar to that. Yes, I would say they didn't have a brand guideline. Nothing like thorough. It was like a logo, the colors, and those silly use the logo like this way and not that way, which are like fine for marketers, but as a developer and designer, I don't need that, right? I need other things like how like you generally build, what is your design system if you have one, or like what is your philosophy for building new sections and components? How do you handle these things? They didn't have any of these, no. So it was kind of like going blind, and for not right. So the experience that wasn't like quite an experience for me, but what I learned from it was also for new clients that I have, I require them to share, and I help them. I help them to we create a mood board together, of websites that they like and websites that they don't like. This is also really important. We had clients who said we don't want those three bullet points next to each other and like an icon on top and centering that. We do not want this. at all. So they were like very clear because I we were exploring this. So I think this exploration is really important and rather easy to do. So it's just something that you have to do with your client. Maybe make a 30-minute call, say let's explore what you like, what you don't like, so you get a very well understanding of what they may want or not want. And also you're helping them because a lot of the times it's an educational problem or they just don't know. So it's our job to help them, guide them towards, them figuring out what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's this problem from communicating words into visuals. Like if I say, you know, I want a really moody, I want a sexy website. It's like, okay, wait, are we talking animations that are really like smooth and glide in? Are we talking, maybe a lot of white space, or maybe there's a lot of imagery, or what does that kind of a word mean? And I think I found that in the exploration call at the start, if you ask them um, what websites they like, sometimes they'll say all sorts of random stuff, and then you're looking at Nike's you know e-commerce page, and then you're looking at, like, I don't know, some podcast website, and you're like, wait, what? And
Yeah,
if you can kind of group those websites in a follow-up call to say, okay, you said you liked this and this, here are some similar websites to this one, and I'm going to call this mood board the, I don't know, happy mood board or whatever.
yeah,
And then you can kind of get a real tight visualization of what they like and what they don't like, and you can discuss that with the client. Because I think I've had this before where someone will say, oh, we're on a tight deadline, we just need to get straight into designing wireframes. No, 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 no. I've
yeah,
had this where it's like, okay, we've got a tight deadline. Oh, okay, shit, we're going to need a homepage and about page and whatever. And actually, you need that kind of yeah,
yeah.
time
It's
to bat ideas around a little bit.
it's a lot of it is about directing the call and everything. You've been hired to do that. You've been paid to play the expert. You are the expert and you have to direct the call and everything. And what I learned this from Ron. I don't know if it was in the course or like where I learned it, but it's like he mentions this, that it's quite difficult to do this, like direct the call and play the expert, even though you are, but because a lot of times you are dealing with CEOs and people who are high rank in what they do, and these people are normally people who tell others what to do. So
Yeah,
it's difficult for you to find that balance and tell them what's good, what's not. But at the end of the day, it's directing the call. What I do, this is also a tip, I when I create the list, I don't send it to them. Sometimes I send it to them prior, but when we are in the meeting to discuss about, because a lot of what I do is animations. We create like creative websites, so um, it's also about your feeling. Like, how do you feel about some certain things? And it's really difficult to convey this, on a Zoom meeting, with the 15 FPS screen share. So what I do, I give them the links one by one, and I tell them to share their screen, open the website on their, computers, and then we talk about, I tell them go there, that menu, that's what I'm talking about. So that way they completely, like, they firsthand experience what I'm trying to explain, and
convey. Yeah.
now they can tell me, oh, I do like this or I don't like this, and that way I get a much better detailed understanding of what they need and what they don't like.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think this whole asking for feedback thing is actually a bit of an art. People say you got to get feedback from the client. It's like, well, don't just say, what feedback do you have in an
Yeah,
email? Like, that's not going to help you. And yeah, it's quite difficult when egos come into it as well. If there's someone who's maybe not a visual person but has very, very strong um, sense of what they think is right and wrong, it's kind of difficult. I feel like you've
yeah,
got to make them feel like they are the decision maker, but actually guide them in a direction that, yeah, is actually the, in your opinion, as a consultant, the right decision
Yeah.
for them to make. Um, but yeah, strange. This is why Webflow is so important, though, because I feel like with Webflowers, you know, you do it because you enjoy making stuff, but actually making stuff for someone else is a whole different ball game, and there's a little bit of kind of sense of yeah, I guess human management that
Yeah,
needs to happen.
definitely.
And then there's the marketing manager that comes in and fucks it all up. Okay, tell me about failure number 2, burnout after making 2 courses and getting hit by the issues in your home country.
Yeah, so this is by the end of last year, 2022. Um, so I made that course with Ron. It was quite a lot of work. Like it was 3.5 months of intense daily work on the course. And then after that, YouTube videos I want to do, and then a lot of work with my team because I wasn't working with them for 3 months. So they were like on autopilot for 3 months. And then I decided to create a course in Farsi, so in Persian language, a Webflow course. So I did that too, like started that, designing everything myself. Quite a lot of work when you get into creating like such a also broad. It's a big course because it's meant for people who don't speak English, or like they have that English, that language barrier. So doesn't matter to what extent, but it was meant for people who couldn't even consume Webflow 101 videos. So the course ended up being really like big. I made that, and at that time that I was juggling so many things at the same time, that I don't know, called like revolution or protests happened in Iran. It all originated also from my home, not just the home country, but the city that I was like born in. So that's why it hit like really hard. And in the past I had, there was some like issues you've probably heard in the news. Like there are always issues with Iran and generally in Middle Eastern countries. And as somebody who lives here, from Iran, living here, it's always that difficult decision. Do you want to be involved in, meaning like paying attention or doing something, or completely shutting it off? All right. This can happen in all countries, right? Even if you are from the US and something happens, and something like really big, and it hits you and it kind of tries to consume you. And now you have to, decide, do you want to pay attention, do something there, or, live your life in a,
Little
closed,
bubble.
yeah, in your like the bubble you create. Um, so in this case, it was really difficult to shut it down, and it was also that moral, question and responsibility. If I can do something, should I, shut it off and not do anything and just, continue living here? So I ended up redirecting all that frustration that I had. It was quite a lot of frustration, because people were being killed. It was a really, really difficult situation. You've probably heard about it too. Women Live Freedom. That was what people were chanting. Funny enough, it's coming from my mother tongue, so it all like kind of like hit me even more because it's, it resonated so close, right? So the first, I believe it was like the first 2 days, I decided to buy the domain, Women Life Freedom, and I was like, I'll create a website. That's what I do best. I can't like help any other way. So I'm going to redirect all that pain and frustration and, anger. It was quite a lot of anger. at the government for like killing innocent people. So how do you deal with that? And you're so far away, you can't do anything. The internet is shut off in Iran. You can't even talk to your friends. So I decided to create this website, and I spent, I believe, like 3 to 4 weeks nonstop on designing and creating that website. I really encourage you to go check it out, womenlifefreedom.com. If you can check it out on desktop, it would be even better. Even it's mobile responsive, and we have all the animations there too. But yeah, I tried to do what I do best, and that was creating a statement that's a political stand. We discussed a lot about this with a friend of mine who's studying philosophy. Um, there was a lot of decisions going into this creation of this website, especially regarding copywriting. Like, what text do you write in a website like this? Like, how do you position it? Because it's not a news agency. Do you want to be neutral, or do you want to take a stand and say that's what my stands, that's what I stand for? So that's what we ended up doing, and writing the text. I really encourage you to write the text. It's not long. Um, we made something that is very story driven and is taking sides. It's like our side, people's side, not the government side. So I try to steer all that, energy, even though it was a lot of negative energy, in that direction, and it helped actually. Like it, I had the energy to do it. It felt like I have to do this. I can't do anything else. So I ended up reducing a lot of my time at Flux, not doing videos anymore. I was really down. It was a very difficult time, and most of my days at that time I was working on that website as if the only thing I could do for the time that I could function. And yeah, I guess that's where I had a burnout without really knowing, because I could not stop, even though I now I can look at the past and say, well, yeah, it was burned out, but at that time I couldn't stop, and I never did. I didn't have the luxury of being able to slow down or stop whatever I'm doing, because I had to work. So yeah, I guess I continued.
Wow. Okay, thanks for sharing that. I really recommend people listening to this, go and check out womenlifefreedom.com. Just for anyone that doesn't have the context for this, it's on the website, but yeah, just to kind of, I know that this is obviously a very raw thing for you, Kabarza. So it's and it's so close to your home country. You obviously know what's going on in Iran so well. But for anyone that doesn't, there was a woman called Masa Amini who got killed because she wasn't wearing her hijab properly.
Yeah,
And there's basically a brutal dictatorship with the morality police who
yeah,
judge what's right and wrong. And this was a question about liberty and freedom, um, and people took to the streets. And then there was a brutal oppression of people, and according to your website, over 435 people were killed. This is towards the end of last year. So an incredible, yeah, just a really important website for you to make. And it sounds like it took all your energy to make it in a very, very difficult time for you. So
yeah,
go and check it out if you haven't already. For anyone that's listening, it doesn't sound. I mean, in terms of all the different failures that I've heard on this podcast so far, I mean, for you to um, fail to keep up the other commitments in your life alongside making this website, I can't help feeling that this is possibly the most important non-failure. I mean, this sounds like a very important thing for you to do. So um,
Yeah,
I think Ran and the team probably forgave you for not being on your
yeah,
best form during this period. Um, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. And an amazing response came from Twitter and I'm sure wherever else you shared this though.
yeah.
So it was really
It did. Like a lot of people who I did not know started sharing the website. A lot of interesting people. It also, like, I got to know so many people who were like really interested in the matter, and they started resharing it exactly on Twitter, on Instagram. It was I got an amazing response.
mm. And
Yeah,
it's awesome to have done something that had such an impact because I think a lot of the time when you're doing client work, that there's obviously business impact that you're hopefully improving KPIs and whatever, but actually the kind of real this website had an impact beyond business, and that's
yeah.
a really important. Um, yeah, it must be a really fulfilling thing to have done and to have achieved. So,
Definitely. It's Yeah, exactly. This is a really good point. Like, we were not bounded by, the KPIs of the business or the requirements of a client. It was all about, okay, there are so many things I can do in Webflow, and like I've been trying to communicate emotions through design and animations, and this
mm,
is this is it. This is the way I can do it. I have complete freedom. Like,
mm,
there is nobody telling me, how to do it. Even if you are building like your profile website, you are still bounded by, you have a user base, you want to serve them, the target audience, whatever. For so many websites that you even own yourself, not just clients, you are still bounded to in so many ways. For this website, we were really not bounded to any. We just had a lot of discussions around the wording. Like, if we are saying, some, like, anything specific, like, what do we mean by that? Why do we say it? Like, where is our stand? That was, but all in a good way, right? We had the freedom to decide. It was something that we had to decide. But then the other thing is the freedom that, Webflow has allowed me to do this. That's was really interesting. And also, Vlad himself, the CEO of Webflow, he also migrated with his family to US when he was, I think, 2 or 3 years old, from Russia. So this was also really interesting. Like, the tool that he has made allowed me, for example, to be the voice of my people, without, in this no code way that is much easier to do, right? And that was really interesting, and yeah, liberating, that I can do this without, many limitations.
mm, yeah. No, there's an interesting symmetry between you and Vlad in that respect. Um, and it's cool to see the tool, have such a profound impact, beyond just me and you as kind of users of the tool to do the building, but then to have the impact, beyond that socially
Exactly.
is so cool, especially since the internet was switched off during that period for um, Iranians and to be in Germany and to share what's going on and for the rest of the world is wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
really inspirational. So
For anybody listening, I really encourage you, go and, at this part where we talk about like internet being shut down, I really spend a lot of time trying to animate that part. And like, how do I convey this? How do I explain? Like, how do I slow down the user and say, Iran is offline. It's literally there on the website. And what does that mean? And like every animation, I'm trying to find a way to convey that feeling that I had at that time, or the image. If you go to the website, you'll see it that says it's Islamic Republic of Iran, and then the word off gets, and then replaced by verses. So it's the government versus the people, and you see it in the picture, and it all moves, and animates. I spend really a lot of time like thinking about these things, and yeah, um, at the end of the day, I'm really happy that I got to do it, even though it was a difficult time, got a burned out, but I'm happy that I continued and I have something to show for that time.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's definitely worth looking at if people haven't yet. Tell me about failure number 3. You very recently lost a huge client.
Yeah, it was quite painful, but at the same time, not really, and liberating. So I had a client last year. We started working together. This was my first enterprise client. Actually, they wanted us to migrate their entire website from Codebase to Webflow. And they are like that, typical in the sense that, Webflow tries to target this type of clients, and this is like a really big corporation valued over $1 billion US dollars, and they're like an absolute like mega, like they are also growing like crazy. So their website was built using code, and with their internal developers and engineers, the typical Webflow target client, or like their, I would say that the best client that you could like have. So they wanted us to migrate the entire website to Webflow, rebuild it the way it is without changing a pixel, unless that pixel was like bugged. So if there was a bug, we had to fix it. If not, we had to migrate everything exactly the same way. And it might not sound really difficult, but it is very difficult, because the website was built with custom code. So imagine the breakpoints were different. A lot of ways that they were approaching things were different from the way it is in Webflow. We took 2 months. It took us 2 months to do the entire thing, with CMS, with integration, a huge website, a good client. And later on, they wanted us to uh, basically recreate some part of the website, because they are going through a big change, and they want to create an absolute like huge news and media um, part on their website, which is like, I don't know, like 20 different CMS. It's insanely huge. They want to create for us to create that. I was helping them in the design phase, and for the development phase, they were not sure if they want to do it internally, because they have a team of Webflow developers now. Their team learned Webflow during that time. They hired somebody because they want to do everything in house, but they were not sure if this task is too big for their internal team, if they can handle it, or they want to give it to me, because we could handle it. I have a bigger team, and like we knew the ins and outs of Webflow and also their project. So it was actually like closer to 40K. So 40K like just for the build. And the last moment, basically, they said no. They decided to go with their internal team, and they might have like other things for us later on, but for now we didn't have to do it. So uh, the money was like it was a huge amount of money, and it would like really help, but at the same time it would mean that I could not work on anything else, or just I had to stop living for that time, and they were also on a really tight deadline. So that meant I had to basically work day and nights with my team, multiple people on the same project. So we had like that plan to build different parts of it in different projects, because you can't simultaneously work, even though they are on enterprise plan and you can do simultaneous works, but it's not it we couldn't do these things. So anyway, it meant a lot of work. So that's why when we got the no, I was actually like, oh, okay, that's not really bad. I'm going to have a lot of time on my hand to work on flowing. Like finally, I've been trying to find some time to not do a lot of client work and focus on designing flowing and deliver the designs to my developer to develop the Chrome extension and the plugin. And I never had the proper time. I was like, I've been working on it for the past 6 months, but without much to show. It was always, working on it for a few days on the weekends, and then for a month, like, working very little on it. So losing that client on that sense, it was good. So I can have time there, but it also means that I don't have a lot of money. So I could like run out of money if I wouldn't get like enough smaller clients at the same time. But we are handling just fine right now. We are trying to bootstrap it and not raise any money. So get to a point where we can get users roll in, probably like some light light features at the beginning, but the core features soon, so we can get paid users and continue building.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a blessing in disguise because um, I think sometimes when you have a lot of money, you try and solve problems with money. And actually, you can have quite a sluggish approach to problem solving if when you're kind of like a lion's hungriest when it's sorry, I ruined that phrase. A lion is most dangerous when they're hungry.
Yeah,
I don't even know if that's the right phrase, but my point is that you are kind of thinking on your feet way more without the resources and time luxury to you know really analyze every single situation. So you're kind of just like going for it, hell for leather, and maybe you'll do things better and quicker off the back of that in a strange way.
probably. I'm having a lot of fun in Figma. I'm not doing a lot of Webflow nowadays, but a lot of Figma. So like starting my day with Figma, ending it with Figma, building the design systems and everything in Figma. I don't have a background in design. I normally don't call myself Webflow designer or web designer at all. I'm more like that developer person, but nevertheless, I'm doing the entire design so far by myself in Figma. The reason for that is we are using the UI elements that Webflow has, but that doesn't mean that we are like copying those, because we are creating like new things. So
Mm.
we have to look at Webflow. Well, when I say we, I'm like for this part, I'm doing this mostly alone, looking at what Webflow components have and how they behave. Not Webflow components literally, but I mean like the UI,
Yeah.
how it works and how they are like adding that extra feature. How would they do that? And we are trying to do that because I believe like users want this experience to be as native like as possible. So that's the route we are going for, to make the extension look like it's really made by Webflow, to be very native and also really well integrated as much as possible. It's a very difficult task on the development part, and on the design part, I'm not a Figma design system guy, like experienced in that. So I'm breaking a lot of things. I'm like reusing components one day, and another day I notice, okay, I did that was not the best way of building it, so maybe down the road I have to rebuild the component system that I was like building. But yeah, still pushing and trying to to get closer to that first viable, version that we can share. We have like functions that we have built already, but it's not enough to share, so we are still on in that stage. But it's looking good, it's looking really good, and I'm really excited, I'm really having fun doing it. And I think that's really important, because if I had to, which I'm trying to hire a designer to help me, a UI designer, a UX designer, probably growing the team for sure. But as of now, I think my intuition for what's a good UX design, I think in most parts I'm like, I have a good intuition for what can create a good user journey. So I'm trying to go with it. Just, if my first intuition is not the worst, version possible, why not? So if it's the fastest and it's, intuitive for, you to use, I show it to my friends. I'm like, does this make sense? Oh yeah, it does, it looks good. So, or, maybe change that thing, or maybe that search there is a bit confusing, or that filter is confusing, things like this. Like, I'm still getting feedback, but for the most part, just, pushing Figma designs right now.
Awesome. I again doesn't sound like a huge failure. It sounds like this is actually leading you in a very interesting direction. So I'm excited to see flowing come together. Are you ready for your final question? That's a little bit harder.
Yeah, definitely.
What is your next failure going to be?
My next failure. Oh, I haven't thought of. I'm afraid of sticking with something for too long. Um, right now, I'm juggling too many things. Right, building a team, an agency. We are developing templates, designing right now, but very soon develop them. We're working on like ways of doing it. And the extension, even flowing, there are like multiple things we can do. We have like, I haven't talked about it so far, like 1 hour in, I haven't said that we have a component library system, that you can share with your, friends or coworkers. And we are taking also the educational aspect of this. It's just doing a lot of things, and I'm afraid of maybe sticking with one of these for too long and not kill it. If I can't jiggle, if I can't do all of these things at the same time, even though they have a good synergy, a lot of these, if I can't do them a lot and, fail at doing one, or at least like a few of them properly, so that would be a failure. If I end up, in 2 years not having a good agency, or a good brand, or, a good extension, or a template library, if I don't have any of these, then I failed at all of them.
Ooh la la. Okay, we'll have to get you back on the podcast. No, I'm sure you'll be absolutely gravy. It sounds like you've got an amazing team behind you. It sounds like you are self aware enough to know where you're good and where you're not good, and you're delegating things accordingly. And also, it sounds like you are managing to juggle these things pretty well right now. I mean, if you take on more stuff, I agree. I think that might be. I mean, yeah, if you, I think I read this crazy study about people that don't get, if they don't have 8 hours sleep a night, then they are way more likely to get Alzheimer's. So just make sure if you're burning the candle at both ends, just don't do it for too long. That's a bit of a downer to end the episode on. Where can people message you if they wanted to message you about anything from this podcast?
I would love for you to reach out over Twitter. So it's Kabarza underscore. Yeah, just that, Kabarza underscore, because I have Kabarza reserved with an email that I have like from university, and I don't have access to, and Twitter doesn't give it back to me. So for now, we are sticked with Kabarza underscore.
Kabarza underscore. That will be in the show notes if anyone wants to slide on down there and message him. Kabarza,
Yeah,
thank you so much for sharing what you have. You've told some really, really interesting things during this podcast episode, and I'm sure people will, want to ask you some questions off the back of listening to this, because there's so much you're doing and so many interesting things you've said today. So thank you.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun talking to you. And yeah, any listeners, if you want to ask or suggest something for the flowing plugin, what are you frustrated by? We'll be happy to tackle it. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Thanks so much.
thank you.